Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, 10 of my favourite books from before I started BookTube. But before we get to the books, bear with me for 1 minute because we have a sponsor for this video today, and that sponsor is Serious Readers, who sent me one of their high definition reading lights to try out, and I have to say it is fantastic. But if you're like me, getting on a little bit in years, I'm over 50 now, and I do find reading in the evening sometimes, even with the ceiling light on, can be a bit of a strain on my eyes. I've tried out this high definition reading light and it really makes a huge difference, and it's beautifully constructed as well. So they're made in the UK of really high quality materials. If you have a look on the website, there's a ton of different finishes and things like that you can get for them. The light quality is fantastic. It really does make a difference in reading. The head of the light is completely adjustable. You have 5 different brightness settings. It's really easy to turn on and off. And you can also change the focus of the beam. So if you fancy checking them out, there's a link in the description to this video to their website. And if you use the code OLLY24, you'll get £100 off your first order and free shipping in the UK. They do ship internationally as well. So yes, thanks very much for listening. Let's get back to the books. So I've shamelessly stolen the concept for this video from Leandra from the channel Leandra the TBR0, who I saw do it the other day. I just thought it was a really excellent idea for a video. So the concept is I'm going to talk you through 10 really great books that I read before I started doing the channel. And these are all books that I don't think I've ever talked about on the channel. If I have, feel free to call me out in the comments, but I don't think I've talked about any of these on the channel before. And they're all fantastic. They're all really, really good books. And they're all books that I think would be enjoyed by anybody. So there's quite a variety of books here. There's even a couple of non-fiction books. And there's no horror books. And I think the reason for that is, I was reflecting on that when I made this list. I've kind of gone through my Goodreads and come up with this list. And I was like, there's no horror on there. That feels a bit weird. I think that's because I've done a load of like top 10 horror books of different types kind of videos, and therefore most of my favourite horror books I've already talked about on the channel. So yes, so you've got crime on here, you've got science fiction on here, you've got, yeah, as I say, non-fiction, a variety of different things, and like kind of general fiction as well. So I'll stop waffling and get on with the list. So the first book is actually 2 books. So this is a crime series from Hard Case Crime. There's 2 books in the series so far. There is a 3rd book that's just been announced. I can't wait to read it. The books are by the author Christa Faust, and the 2 books are Money Shot and Chokehold. These are great. So these are detective books where the detective is a porn star. So a female porn star called Angel Dare, who's also like a producer. She makes movies and things like that, as well as featuring in them, and investigates various crimes. They're just really, really well done and fascinating. I always like crime books that have a bit of a twist in terms of the identity of the detective. I guess it's a bit of a trope in crime fiction and crime TV shows, isn't it? But Christa Faust does a fantastic job in these books of like presenting in what feel like interesting facts about the porn industry, but also writing really good, slightly hard-boiled detective stories. Next one then is science fiction. This is The Man from Primrose Lane by James Renner. This is a book I don't think I've ever seen anybody else talk about. I thought it was brilliant. It's a very difficult book to talk about without spoiling, because where it ends up is completely different from where it starts. But it starts out being about this mysterious house in like a kind of fairly regular suburb in the States, where there's clearly something weird going on. And the direction James Renner takes this book in was completely not what I was expecting. It ends up being a really, really fascinating science fiction book. But yeah, starts feeling like it's going to be something quite simple. But it's that kind of book that's got an immediate mysterious hook right at the start that really grips you. Next one is a crime book. This is The Long Drop by Denise Mina. This is a great historical crime novel based on a true case, I think, about this killer in Glasgow. and just about his crimes and his trial, and what happens thereafter. But I just thought it was brilliantly written, really captures the feeling of the time and place in a fantastic way. And I think crime fiction often does that. Crime fiction, if you think about it, is often set in, you often get series set in a particular city, and crime books often, because they dig into like the underbelly of society, often give you, I think, a really interesting view of both time and place, and The Long Drop definitely does that. Next up, kind of general fiction, I guess, and I think this won some awards. I can't remember which ones. I don't normally talk about books I don't necessarily care about books for winning awards, but I'm pretty sure this book did win some awards. The book is Washington Black by Edugyan. This was fantastic. This is the kind of book that feels like it's got everything you need in a novel for that book to be enjoyable. Great characters, great plot, a bit of adventure, a bit of romance, just a really fantastic book. It's about a guy who's a slave. The master of the plantation where he's a slave dies, and his world kind of gets turned upside down after that. But just a really, really fantastic book that, again, goes in directions you don't really expect at the start, but thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyable. Next we have another crime novel, A Paper Mask by Colee. This is really, really good. So this is a book about a guy who manages to impersonate a doctor in a hospital. So he manages to he's like a porter at the hospital, and he manages to convince people that he's actually a surgeon. And it's just about him trying to live that lie. Really, really an excellent, excellent thriller. Absolutely fascinating. There's a great movie based on it as well. Next up, some more crime, The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. This is just a really fun, kind of a modern crime novel, but one that plays around with kind of golden age crime tropes. So it's about a guy who has died, who's the author, like a famous crime author, who's died in slightly mysterious circumstances. And it's about someone who works for his publishing company investigating his death. But you've got within it one of his books. So you get two books for the price of one, two fantastically enjoyable mysteries for the price of one. Just a really fun, playful crime novel. More crime next. We have Shutter Island by Denise Lehane, which definitely isn't a fun or playful crime novel. Just a fantastic, like quite gritty crime novel about a guy who is imprisoned. A very, very psychological kind of a thriller. Again, there's a fantastic movie based on this. This is one of those books where, people always have that debate of which is better, the book or the movie. In this case, I think the book and the movie are equally good. They're both really, really fantastic, really like quite complex in terms of their plotting, and thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyable. Next, we have the first of the two non-fiction books on the list. This is Guest House for Young Widows by Azadeh Moaveni, a book that I think is really important because it explores a topic that we don't ever really talk about, and that is why people join like terrorist organisations. So this is a book about young women who have joined ISIS. And it's really, really interesting. It's brilliantly done, really grippingly written. You really get involved in the lives of these women. But some like fascinating stories there, and the motivations for why people get involved in things like this, I think are really interesting to read about. And it's really important that we understand stuff like that as well. So I found it a really interesting book, a very moving book, and a book that I've reflected on after finishing it. Next up, we have some science fiction, Dark Eden by Chris Beckett. So this is one of those books that just takes a weird concept and builds on it. So I've said on the channel before that I don't really like books that are all about world building. This book kind of is all about world building. It's all about a world where there is no light, where everything is dark, and it's about humans like living on that world and trying to trying to exist. Really, really interesting characters, and just the way that Chris Beckett evolves the society that they live in, without light is very, very interesting. So I thought it was a great book. There are more books in the series. I haven't read those yet, but I probably need to give those a try. And then finally, some more non-fiction, The Psychopath Test by Ronson. Ronson is a British journalist and an author whose stuff I always enjoy. I've read a few different books by him, and also a big fan of his podcasts. This book is about psychopaths basically, and how there's a big kind of correlation between people who are very successful in industry and people who are psychopaths. So a fascinating book. The thing that is great about Ronson is his stuff is, whilst he talks about quite deep, important topics, his stuff is very, very accessible and often very, very funny as well. And that's definitely true of The Psychopath Test. So there you go, 10 great books from my pre-BookTube days. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of them. Let me know if you think I have talked about them on the channel before. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.